Hello, everyone, and welcome to Schmidt List. I'm your host, Kurt Schmidt. I am excited you are here to join me because we've got an amazing show happening today. We're going to be learning so much stuff about LinkedIn. And as you all probably know, I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, way too much time on LinkedIn. I guess it's more of a Gen X TikTok these days, but there's a guest that I've got. We're going to be talking all about it, and I'm excited for you to join me. Now, before we jump in, speaking of LinkedIn, if you check out the Solo Club, the Solopreneur Connection is there. It's our private member-only group for solopreneurs where we're sharing ideas, tools, tricks, things. We're sharing things. It's good. You'll like it. Go and check it out. And the new book is available on Amazon, so don't forget to go and check that out as well. Links in the description. So let's jump in and meet my friend Alex. Alex, how are you today?
I'm doing so good. Thank you, Kurt.
So
We're going to learn your things. Huh?
This is going to be fun.
Yeah, agreed.
It's going to be fun. All right, Alex, let's introduce you to the audience. So tell me about the work you're doing and who you're doing it for.
Well, I'm the co-founder of Aware, which is a LinkedIn tool that's helping entrepreneurs, LinkedIn agencies, coaches, consultants, even sales reps, wide variety of people actually spend a bit less time on LinkedIn, but be more focused. So it's drawn from the inspiration of how I used LinkedIn to build my agency over the last 7 years and then successfully exit it. And it's all the things that I wish I had while I was doing that. Engagement feeds, analytics, CRM sync, stuff that I thought, man, I would have made my life easier to have that all these years.
Yeah, I agree. I'm enjoying the tool. I've been using it for a couple of months here, and I've been on LinkedIn now for, 17 years or something? It's since 2007 or something.
All right.
And it's changed so much over the years, but also parts of it just have not changed all that much. So tell me about the inspiration behind, have you built a lot of software before?
Not really, no. I was the inspiration for my current co-founder to build his last tool.
Okay.
And I was merely a partner, reseller, friend, and customer. And then when we co-founded Aware together, it was actually 4 years ago, and we built an entirely different version of it that we had to burn to the ground, but it was actually 2020. And I was like, okay, let's do it together this time. And so we did. We learned after 2.5 years of kind of flitting around while we were both doing different things that we had built the wrong thing. And so we had to spin it down and try again. I was actually able to sell the reseller business of that last tool. So not even the SaaS, but a reseller business of the SaaS. So I kind of have technically already successfully exited a small SaaS company, but it was small enough that I was like, you know what? We're not going to brag about that one. But this is the first one where I'm like co-founder of the software company. So we're learning fast from agency to SaaS. There are some lessons, plenty of overlap, but also some lessons to be learned and things to do differently.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Again, as they say, no product survives its first impact with the market, right? So I'm sure as soon as it's out there, you're like, okay, this works for me. And then the flood of messages comes in of like, where's this? Where's that? Why can't I?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, it continues to this day. The amount of people who are just like, so I have some feedback for you. Is this like an immature product? Like, you just getting your first customers? Like, if you want me to take me for free so I can be a beta user, I'd love that. I was like,
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, I would really appreciate that. I do appreciate customer feedback. We have over 400 customers at this point. Nonetheless, please give me your feedback. And no, you can't have it for free. But yeah, I guess you just don't like it. That's fair. So that happens to this day. And it's probably going to keep happening for however long we exist. If you think about Salesforce,
Yeah,
how many complaints they still get. It was 2 years ago, people were like, Salesforce Classic sucks. Salesforce Light sucks. Like many billions of dollars in annual profit. So, I don't expect we'll ever get to the point where everyone just loves us unconditionally with no complaints. So
yeah.
it's every day.
Yeah. You go just take one look at, Apple's discussion boards and you'll see what, $1 trillion company has to deal with all of this stuff. So there's no escaping it. It's more about how you manage it in the end. And I'm really excited. I'm really proud of you for getting this thing off the ground because it is a unique tool. That's what I find interesting about it, because I've used lots of LinkedIn helper type tools over the years. I've used a lot of different versions of, AI tools, commenting tools, all sorts of different things. But what I find interesting about the way you approach it, like you said, I feel like it is more like how I actually work, like the workflow that I would do manually. I mean, there's still some manual efforts to it, but it's almost like you took the LinkedIn feed and commenting and liking and interacting stuff and just made it much more optimized and being able to process a lot more information in a shorter amount of time. So was that kind of your experience using LinkedIn? Like, tell me about your LinkedIn journey a bit and how that helped you build not only this product, but the agency and work that you did.
Yeah. Well, it's frustrating sometimes how when we built the V1 of our tool, Taplio built theirs shortly after we started, but our V1 didn't get off the ground and theirs did. And so we had
Mhm.
to come back and say, what did we do wrong? And to our credit, sorry, to our non-credit, we didn't build a very functional tool the first time. And I was like, why did we build this? We built this because me and a lot of other people that we talked to had spent a long time using LinkedIn, but saying, of course I use it. Of course this benefits my business, but I'm spending, 2, 3 hours a day on it. And so I had to realize we don't want to add chores to people's day. We want to take them away. So can we build something that reduces the time you need to spend doing all this stuff? And that's where we end up building the V2 in, is just saying, we're going to build a way to have people say, if I was going to do an hour on LinkedIn, now I can do that same hour in 15 minutes. For me, that's way more useful and worth it than saying, here's this other tool you should check to do even more stuff. And it was like, it was cool. About V1, people were saying it's cool, which is the worst thing you could hear. I don't want to build something cool. I want to build something that you cannot leave because it's so useful. So that was the lesson we learned. And yeah, it's not designed to help you do just like scale stupid. It's easy to scale stupid with some AI tools
Yes.
out there. That's the problem, I think, with a lot of automation is, what are you scaling? And the way to get a lot of revenue from LinkedIn is just do marketing well. If you scale a bad marketing, then you're going to not do super well,
Yeah.
or they're not going to do much more of it. So we didn't want to have that effect. And to this day, we resisted building some features that people ask for, but that I think would just not be good for them to have. Like, let me just turn on a full automated AI commenting thing. Sure, we could build that. It would not be very hard to build that, but it wouldn't do anything good. So I don't really want to.
Well, and the way that I used LinkedIn personally was, I wasn't selling cheap stuff. I mean, most of our agency engagements started in the six figures as it is. And so using spammy type tools or AI type things was counterintuitive to the level of things that I was trying to scale. Now, if you're out there and you're watching this or listening to this and you're selling a $19 course on marketing or something, yeah, go ahead and do your AI stuff until LinkedIn kicks you off the platform. But if you're trying to sell things that are of a much higher value, you've got to build relationships and they take time, but you also have to stay top of mind with people. And that's where I find Aware has been really helpful for me because I like the idea of being able to go in and comment and be able to spend time commenting thoughtfully on things, but also being able to find the people that I'm really interested in commenting on. So that's where Aware has been really helpful for me. So tell me about that workflow for you. How do you advise people just on the commenting side of LinkedIn? Because it's such a huge part of what makes LinkedIn a really valuable
Yeah. It's to start with the purpose of the comment, which is you're leaving a micro brand impression. So when you leave a comment, you're not the same thing as writing a post, but you're doing that same kind of thing on a small level. And so you're adding this extra depth, which is you're engaging with somebody. So there's the level of are you engaging with? What's your relationship with them? What are you saying? What are they saying? There's just a whole nuanced blend of social interaction that comes with it. And so when you can kind of get in the habit of it, you can think about, okay, well, if I'm doing this for marketing or personal brand marketing, what do I want to do? How do I want to kind of not coldly calculate in this Machiavellian way, but how can I plan how I'm going to do my commenting? For me, before my posts go up, I like to go to the community feed in Aware and I do maybe 5 or 10 comments on people's posts that usually engage with me. It's just sort of like a supporting them also kind of doing a little subtle alert to them like, hey, I'm about to post too. And then I go to the influencer's feed. And so my business often is sold to, well, the product is sold to LinkedIn agencies, people using LinkedIn. So we have a LinkedIn growth influencer feed. I go to that. I leave 5 or 10 more comments. It takes me less than 30 seconds per comment because Aware is so fast. And I'm not spending time scrolling the feed, looking for something to comment on. And that's the big time waster on LinkedIn, is looking for something to comment on. So by taking that away, you get 20 comments in 5 minutes. Lastly, I'll often go to my custom list. So I have a custom list that I built of people that I want to engage with, and I'll go back to them and do again, 5 more comments, 25, 30 comments up as my post goes live. And so it just makes my own post do better. It's giving back to the network, both for algorithm reasons, because LinkedIn doesn't want you to just sit behind your throne and speak to the people. They want you to be in it. And then also for community reasons, like by literally supporting people's posts, it helps them out. It tells them that you're contributing to them and their success too. So you're not just being selfish and showing up LinkedIn and posting and ghosting. That's kind of how I approach the commenting side of things.
Yeah, I love it. I think, to me personally, there's this advice I give people on LinkedIn all the time. Like, I run into people so much that they're like, well, I just don't like going to LinkedIn. And I'm like, well, are you curating your feed, right? You probably have people you connected with years and years ago, and they show up in your feed and it's annoying. And so you kind of just stop going, and I'm like, you can go up there and just turn them off. You don't have to like delete them or block them. You can just turn them off. And so a lot of my advice over the years has been going through and turning people off that are not relevant to you anymore. You can always turn them back on later. But if you want to have a curated feed that is more interesting and something you can learn from. Now, what I like about what you've done with the tool, for example, is that it's like that on steroids, is that I can really, really curate it, because when you log into LinkedIn, you're kind of left up to the feed's algorithm and what it's going to show you, right?
Yeah.
But having the ability to really curate that feed down into a select group of people that I really want to focus on building community and interacting with is really important to me, especially because, I've built relationships a lot that started on LinkedIn, and maybe some people that I had built relationships with for a year or two before I even met them in person, right? And that's been really important and powerful for me in order to not only build those relationships, but also to learn more, right? Because one of the reasons why I like using LinkedIn is because I get a chance to learn not only what people are up to and keeping an eye, right, on what people are doing and how successful they're being and what those new opportunities are, but then also what I can find in terms of just industry news and industry knowledge. And if I can curate my feed even more, I get the benefit of that, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I love that you called it a Gen X TikTok, because that's super on point. A lot of the people who have not started on LinkedIn say, for example, well, I sell to tax professionals. They're not on LinkedIn. I'm like, yeah, they are. They're not posting as much, not usually building personal brands as much, but they're definitely there. And they're there to learn. They're there to stay current. They're there to see what other people are up to. There's no getting around the fact that humans like this type of technology. They like, seeing what everyone else is doing. It's the modern equivalent of keeping up with the Joneses. And so no matter who you're selling to, they use LinkedIn. Even, 4% of people in the agricultural industry use LinkedIn. That's still a good amount. I mean, it's not everyone, but 4% of an entire industry is enough. There's enough in any industry to carve out a niche and to pay attention to it. So especially if you're, B2B, tech, white collar, like marketing, HR, sales, like especially that. But even if it's, logistics and supply chain, they're there. They're not there as much, but there's enough. And with the law of large numbers, you don't need millions of people to see your stuff. You just need, depending on your price point, like you said earlier, if it's tiny, then you kind of do need a lot. But if it's, 100 customers would be a perfectly good agency for you over the course of 3 years. You don't need that many impressions. So
Right.
It's more about curation than it is about sheer volume. This is not TikTok in that respect. It's the value of an impression on LinkedIn is way higher than a TikTok impression.
Oh yeah. 100%. And it's funny because I follow sort of how things have been going. Like I mentioned, I've been on LinkedIn forever, and it's still amazing to me, all these people that seem to just like find it nowadays, right? Like I just saw a video, like, I don't know, it was a couple months ago or something, Alex Hermosi, who's like Gary V 2.0, right? And he did a whole video on LinkedIn where he's like, he put up all these stats. He's like, I was surprised that, 30% of Americans are on this platform. I thought it'd be way lower. And like, I'm like, are you like, wow, where have you been? Oh yeah, you've been on Instagram and TikTok and like, in a very different world. But yeah, to your point, the quality of the people and interactions that are there are super valuable. And for me and my agency and the agency I built and exited last year and the consulting and coaching business that I'm building now, what's more important to me than selling directly on LinkedIn is to get referrals from people on LinkedIn. That's been the most powerful aspect of LinkedIn for me, and the most profitable side of LinkedIn for me is not going out and actively saying, hey, would you like to make a transaction with me? Me going out and trying to provide value, and somebody saying, hey, that's a person who provides value. And then they are out with someone or somebody or their boss or somebody says, anybody know somebody who can help us with lead gen in our project management in our agency? Oh yeah, I got this guy. He does webinars and we should contact him. And I can't tell you how many times that has happened over the years. So, a lot of the advice that I'm giving people is the goal is not to, sell directly and build immediate sort of thing. But what I find with business owners, and I get it because I've been a business owner, you're a business owner, we want stats. We want KPIs. Like, how many impressions do I get that leads to a sale? Right. And you're like, I don't know, sometimes 2, sometimes 15.
Yeah.
I've had so many clients over the years that have contacted me either at our agency or through coaching who are like, I love your stuff on LinkedIn. I want to meet you and talk to you. Now, these are people that have never commented. They've never interacted with my posts.
Yep.
They've never made any sort of like, hey, I've been watching or looking, because what I found is that while they say, what is it, like 4% of people post on LinkedIn or less or something, right? That means there's 95% lurkers on LinkedIn. And so
Yes.
just because they're not interacting with your stuff and just because they're not commenting on your thing does not mean people don't see it, right? I think you kind of alluded to that earlier, right?
Yeah. That's because especially the decision makers tend not to engage because corporate directors and above are dealing with enough politics internally at their own company. They're certainly not going to broadcast their intentions freely by like engaging with service providers on LinkedIn. So they're going to lurk and lurk and lurk. And then they're going to either contact you directly, or like you said, most of the business that I've gotten from LinkedIn for the agency, at least for Aware of this, my current software company, it's more direct. It's just, you see this, you saw someone else talk about it, you sign up. But for an agency, a lot of it is staying top of mind with the people that refer you business. So if you have a LinkedIn presence and you're reaching your most common referral partners, they're much more likely to remember that you exist and feel good about referring you. And so a lot of the 2/3 actually of the referrals that my agency got were from non-customer that simply stayed top of mind with via LinkedIn. And they thought, well, they didn't think about it. They just subconsciously make their referrals, right? They didn't decide, because of Alex's LinkedIn, I'm going to make this referral. They just sort of did it and felt good about doing it because we had nurtured that presence for so long. So that's how to think about it. Don't think about it as like, ooh, a place to pitch people. Like that's going to have the wrong effect. You're going to be like the weird guy at the party if you be around, to like, drop in the weird guy.
Don't be the guy at the party. Yeah. And it's true because, there is so much misinformation out there in my opinion, though, in terms of these marketing folks, either on social media or YouTube or whatever the case, where they are pitching these ideas of, mass spam and all these things. And then what I see is that these decision makers, and this is a thing that's been challenging for me as someone who coaches people with LinkedIn, and I'm sure it has been for you as someone who provides a tool for LinkedIn engagement, is that what I find is that because these decision makers get inundated with so much spam, right? They get these big long messages. They're like, hey, would you like 20 developers in India today? We can do that. Or would you like to have 500 leads a week? And then they're spamming them. And so then what happens is when I come in and I'm like, hey, can you help you with LinkedIn and actually helping you kind of level up your game and get more clients out of it, they immediately go to that place because that's the experience that they've had. And they're like, oh, well, I don't, LinkedIn is not the place to do that. I don't want to be one of those people. And so because of the environment that is created by these folks, it almost kind of backfires for guys like you who are actually sometimes trying to provide real value.
Yeah. I mean, that happens all the time, but it's not effective. It might work just enough to cover for the cost of a tool and part of a salary in India, right? Like, and that's not much. That's not enough. The amount that it works for some people is nowhere near enough to be a good lead gen channel for you, who likely sells a much higher priced service with better margins, and it's not enough to feed you. So the fact that it's done often should not be confused with its effectiveness. It's not very effective, even though you see it a lot.
Yeah.
It's just for people who don't know how to use LinkedIn, but those people are everywhere. I mean, the people at a conference, again, the weird guy at the conference, there's always those people. Nobody looks at them and says, well, I should do that too. Like, you want to be keynote, you want to be the one raising your hand asking a good question. Like, you don't want to be, the weird person who only contributes to the product. Like I'm selling outsourced dev, the bad backlinks and all the other stuff is those people. So that's the antithesis of what you want to do. The one thing you can sell with LinkedIn outbound automation is LinkedIn outbound automation. So if you are selling that specific service, you can demonstrate your product like that. And the people you will get are people like you with a little bit more money. Outside of that, you can't really sell much that way.
No.
And one guy on my post kind of proved my point. He responded and said, well, I use outbound automation, send a ton of connection requests. And we have a bunch of revenue. But that was his business. His business was helping you, some other entrepreneur, pay some money to learn how to set up all this automation. You're like, okay, well, that's the instruction. If that's your product, then it's can do it.
Right. If you're selling a spamming service and you're spamming people to sell the spamming service, yeah, it's probably a good fit, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, but for me, the idea is that nobody goes to LinkedIn to get pitched. Like that's not why they're there. There's a big difference, and that's what I think a lot of salespeople struggle with because they're like, well, but they're right there. They're right there in front of me. It's like this big pie that they want to jump into and just be like, oh, right? Because it's like, look, it's the CIO of like Johnson and Johnson, and I can sell him stuff. He's right there. I see his photo. I want to get in front of him. I want to
grab him.
Yeah, I sort of grab him, hold him in that bag, and take him home with me, right? Like, but I think that's one of the challenges that people have is like, what is my strategy, right? Because, you probably experienced this because I'm sure you've coached a lot of people on how to use LinkedIn effectively. There's a lot of folks out there that are like, well, I don't want to be showy, Alex. Like, I'm not a showy person. Like, I'm not, and I don't like this idea of thought leadership. Like that sounds gross and all these things. What do you say to people that maybe, struggle with that?
Yeah. I did a big coaching session for a couple hundred sales reps last year, 7 months ago, at a major grid event, a paid speaking engagement where they found me on LinkedIn. Inevitably, in each session, there was at least a few people who raised their hands, and clearly many more that didn't raise their hands and shared that feeling of essentially that LinkedIn just seems cringy. And so what I asked them to do, well, at first I said, that's fine. It's not for everybody. Go do your thing. If cold calling is working better for you, all well and good. I don't want to make you do this. But if you want to examine why you think something is cringy, or when people say, oh, it's showy, they're kind of saying that they have an uncomfortable feeling about other people posting, commenting, doing this whole thing. Well, let's examine that. Where does that come from? Why are we seeing people put themselves out there and thinking or feeling some sort of gross thing? It's not about them. It's something inside of you. So if you're thinking, I'm not a showy person, then don't be showy. If you think any sort of sharing of knowledge and, thought leadership qualifies as showy in a negative way, then you have a very distorted idea of what showy means. I would say a lot of the posing with rented Ferraris and stuff. That's showy. The mere here is some wealth or like the appearance of wealth, and often it's not actual wealth. It's wealthy people don't buy Ferraris. They tend to live within their means, but showing the appearance of income tends to be more, I would consider showy. But a business professional on LinkedIn sharing advice about workflow strategies, ways to be better at a certain job is not showy. It's professional education. And so we have to think about what are our limiting beliefs that are causing us to think that's showy, when it's like, listen to that for a bit and sit with that feeling and think about where that's coming from. And often I find, not in every case, but often I find that it is when someone is feeling that way, they have a low opinion of their own success and they're feeling annoyed that someone else is going after it. And so when we're able to clear that feeling out of the low opinion of your own potential success, you stop feeling so annoyed and cringy at other people trying to do that and doing it. So that's not to psychoanalyze too much, but that's frequently what I find to be the case. And people think it's cringy. It's not because of the copywriting or the tools. It's that underlying belief.
Yeah, I 100% agree, is that it is an area where, and I do this too. I mean, I wrote a book on networking, and one of the first rules is get over yourself. That's the first rule of networking, is that, the idea that the way that you perceive things matters in that moment is not important.
No.
And the same thing when I find when I'm trying to build relationships digitally, same principles apply, is that, just get over yourself. It's just, but I do have to say that I have built some amazing relationships and I have learned so much from so many talented people on LinkedIn. It's just an indispensable tool for me in terms of personal growth, let alone if I was able to connect and find possible prospects and things on it. And that's where I feel like a lot of people have found value in LinkedIn, in terms of people that maybe are not necessarily sales people, but if you're selling to mid-size or small businesses, everybody in that business is a salesperson. There's no such thing as a non-salesperson in those places. But I would say that over the last few years, I see more and more business owners and CEOs and founders being told to get out from behind their logos and start expressing themselves. I mean, we see what happens in the world when an Elon, is all of a sudden now the vice president of the United States, even though he wasn't elected. What happens when a CEO or a founder steps out behind the logo and starts to let you know not only what the products and services they sell are, but what was the driving force behind it? What was the values that drove them around these things? Because that's what I feel like people are more interested in purchasing these days, especially when it comes to purchasing services, is that they want to purchase not just based on the actual service that you're providing, but on the values and the approach that you're bringing as you perform that service. And so, but what we used to find was, 5-10 years ago, if you had, to your point, if you had a lot of logos on your website, your NASCAR was all covered in stickers and, you looked important, then that was good. That was good enough. But I don't find that's the case these days. And so people are being thrust and forced out into these things. I can't tell you how many times, Alex, I've talked to people just in the last year where they're like, well, my boss told me that I need to spend more time on LinkedIn. I'm like, oh, what did they say? And he's like, well, they don't know how to use LinkedIn, but they said they were told that their sales team and people need to spend more time on there. And I don't know what I'm doing. And so I'm seeing people I think there's an aspect to that cringeness, Alex, where not only may they think it's already cringy, but now their boss is telling them to use it. That's even more cringy, right? And so It's so having the ability to have a good mindset going into it, I think is just key.
The boss used to say, stay off LinkedIn. We don't want you to get
Yes.
recruited. And some people are still like that, but it's very much flipping around to the boss is saying, how do we figure out LinkedIn? Because they're seeing their friends actually have business growth from it and they want the same thing. But that boss who never liked LinkedIn and didn't trust it obviously isn't the one to teach you how to do it. So having been doing this for, 7.5, almost 8 years, yeah, I didn't always get it either, but I didn't teach it until I learned it. So
Yeah.
that's probably people like us who are ideally showing me the better way to do it,
Yeah.
because it's, as you said, the indispensable way to not just sell, like that's a pretty limiting version of it, but to meet people generally and make connections. Sometimes those connections lead to revenue.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask you, Alex, because I want to ask you some of the questions I get regularly here and see what your perspective is on it. So one of the questions I get a lot is, how much time should I be spending on LinkedIn? How much time should I be spending every single day on LinkedIn? What do you usually say to somebody who asks that question?
Well, I tend to spend maybe like about 20 minutes a day in the actual like engaging and DMing and so forth. Some more time because my business is LinkedIn specific. I spend more time doing customer support on LinkedIn, but that's more of a customer support function. And then I tend to spend I batch my content creation. I spend about 10 hours a month on content creation. And that includes some like high fidelity, complex media, video, graphics, things like that. But I have help for that too. But the big caveat is if you're starting from scratch and you're just starting to learn to spend time on LinkedIn and have that work out for you, if you start with even 20 minutes a day and 10 hours a month, that's too much. Anything that you start doing to excess before you've had it work for you, you're going to burn out on it because you don't know that it works. So I would say write 1 or 2 posts a week and sit down for 15 to 20 minutes twice a week to just write a normal post. And don't try to spend the amount of time people who have been doing this as a system for a long time spend. You wouldn't train as much as a marathon runner if you're just getting into running. And it's the same reason that they know it works. They have a system. Before you know it works and have that system, you just shouldn't be doing more than that. Unless you're the special type of person who can learn a system once and just decide to commit to it, forever. But that's a minority of people. Most people can't commit like that. So I wouldn't recommend going all in, or your burnout chances go uncomfortably high, in my opinion.
Yeah, makes sense. I give the same advice, which is just take time and ramp up to
Yeah.
spending on as much time as you find value in it, right? I mean, again, some weeks you'll spend a lot of time because there's just, a lot happening sometimes in LinkedIn in like a day or a week, right? Sometimes there's these bursts of activity where a lot of people are having a lot of wins or challenges or things, and there's a lot to do there. And then some weeks are just kind of quiet, like Thanksgiving week
Yeah.
or whatever, where you're not doing. There's not much to do really,
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the types of posts because there's so many different varieties out there of like, what should I be posting, Alex? And I see stats in all these different places. They're like, well, if we do a text only, it gets 70.296 engagement more, and a photo will get 2.64 times. I see all these different things. What's been your experience and what's your advice to people on what type of content should I be, not just the meat of it, but like what's the format that you see and you usually suggest to people?
Really good question. As you mentioned, there's a lot of stats out there from people who've been doing this for a long time, sharing their own differentials in engagement by format. Fortunately, we have a lot of data at Aware, and we can compile this all and see like what actually does better. But it's a complex question to answer because if I tell you that like Brianna Doe's image posts tend to do about as well as Sam Brown's carousels on average, what does that mean to you? For me, it just means that Sam Brown's really good at creating carousels and Brianna Doe's really good at creating image posts. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you should do the same thing. For example, the top highest impressions people in the Aware database in 2024, 5 out of 5 got there from doing short form video, because LinkedIn has currently put a lot of impression share toward short form video, even though the way they calculate an impression is different on short form video than other types of media. Does this mean you should jump into short form video? Maybe, maybe not. But the numbers can tell whatever story people want to tell about them. And so you got to keep that in mind. The easiest type of post to create is a text post. Everyone knows how to write. An image post, you got images on your cell phone camera roll, you can use those. So I would go in terms of difficulty level. Just start with writing and then write with an image that seems relevant, or at least reasonably relevant. The purpose of an image is to, show pictures worth 1,000 words, right? So which 1,000 words? Would a picture help? Use your brain. Don't do it because someone told you to. Just use your brain. Like, does an image belong with this post? Eventually you might think, well, this piece of writing, this PDF, this document should go with the post. Great, but don't do it because an influencer told you to. Do it because it made sense for you, right? Just like in school when you learned that the length of the essay should be, at least this much, but really it should be according to how long it takes you to explore the topic. It's the same idea. For what you want to communicate, what type of media, if any, would make it easier, more digestible, clearer, and so forth. So once you get really good at this, maybe you want to optimize and say, well, that text post did really well last time, and so I'm going to repurpose that as a carousel, and I'll tell my carousel guy to use this text post as a basis, and also ask him to make an infographic out of it. And maybe I'll use the text post as my video script to make a video. All good things, right? But just don't get hung up on, I must do this format because someone said it was good, because as with anything, you can manipulate numbers whatever way you want. So influencers often do that. They say, do it my way, and they'll just cherry pick stats. So take it with a grain of salt. It's not there.
Yeah, there's a great book out there called How to Lie with Statistics. It's a great book. I definitely people suggest it. Read it and be careful of those numbers that people are sharing out there, because a lot of times those are just masks to incompetence, to be honest. So last question, that important one. So people, that maybe they've been on LinkedIn for a while, they're doing it and they're trying different things, and maybe they still feel like, they're not pros, but maybe they're amateur. Maybe they feel in their amateur class, right? What activity is going to be the most valuable for me? So posting, commenting, DMing, connecting, all those different things, Alex, do you rank those things? And I know the answer is going to be depends, because we're talking to a broad audience here, but let's talk to somebody who is actively trying to build their network on LinkedIn for either career purposes or for marketing purposes. What activities are usually going to be, at least in 2025 so far, before LinkedIn changes the algorithm tomorrow, what have you been seeing the most success with?
I think the biggest thing you will miss is offline meetings. So having meetings offline, or just generally building one-on-one connections with people. A lot of people go on LinkedIn and forget that it's a platform to ultimately connect, not just in the literal kind of transactional connect request into the word, but in a connection sense. And what happens when you have more offline meetings from your LinkedIn presence that aren't just pitch meetings is more people are inclined to engage with you and support you, and that helps everything else that you're doing there do better. The second thing that people tend to do not nearly enough of is commenting. A lot of people don't really comment at all, and then they really focus on their own posts, when they really should think about, who am I engaging with in my comments? Because the comment it's a very small, digestible post, essentially. So I would say more offline meetings that are actually meaningful and supportive for both of you, and then more public engagement. So comment ready. I say that because while posting is important, everyone already knows about it. It's the obvious type of social media. So because it's so obvious, everyone overly focuses on their post, where they should be focused on the below the iceberg things, right? So like the base of the iceberg is the commenting, the DMs and the offline meetings, and the just generally supporting each other is the real base of it. And then the tip is the posts. Important. It's part of the iceberg, but it's not the thing that's holding it up. The thing that holds it up is the relationships. So when you have somebody whose posts just tend to do really well, and they're not using the pod but their posts just, people are really supportive of them, and they always are. That's because they have a really good base of offline relationships and relationships built one-on-one, even, like I said, even in DMs and just helping people out. Those people are just like, oh yeah, Kurt, I like that guy. They hit the like button. They don't even think about it. Do that times 20, Kurt gets 20 likes every time he posts. It's not about, did Kurt think for 20 minutes about the perfect, order and bullet points and this and that. He just has a bunch of people who like him. How can you go meet a bunch of people who like you? That'll make your posts do a lot better, even if you write not very well.
I think that's super smart. The real value, like I said, with LinkedIn, I found is that network and building those personal relationships. And yeah, 100% agree. If I can turn those digital introductions into an in-person, it's just so much more valuable. And honestly, I learned so much more about what they're up to. Just, it expands my perspective and viewpoint in my industry and just the world I'm living in. It's just so much more valuable, because I remember doing a talk on LinkedIn back like in 2017, and most people were like, well, I never connect with somebody on LinkedIn until I meet them in person. And I was like, oh, okay. And then after the pandemic, I was like, well, it's going to be flipped now. It's flipped on its head. I see a lot of people that, won't just go to meet people in person until they've stalked them on LinkedIn, at least, let alone connect with you, right? Like we used to Google people, and now people are going to LinkedIn. And it's been great, especially for my coaching business, because, if somebody asks me for testimonials or referrals, I'm like, here's my LinkedIn profile. You can see I've got a lot of recommendations. You can see my connections, the people that I'm interacting with. It's going to be way better than you sending an email to somebody and saying, is this guy legit or not? Because I'm not going to send you somebody who's going to say something negative.
Sure, yeah, they can shape me it.
Right, exactly. So LinkedIn's a great equalizer in that case. You can see, to your point, how many people are engaging with that person, what type of network do they have. And I think that can bring a weight to when you show up. And I tell this to people all the time, is that the great thing about selling these types of services, and I mean services, not a product, is that a lot of times your reputation has to show up before you do. And if you can make that happen and it's a positive thing, you're going to be that much more successful. And that's where I find LinkedIn, you get a lot of juice out of the squeeze with LinkedIn that way.
Tons. Yeah. The reputation point, like you said, if anyone's heard of you, then it's going to be so much easier for you to run that sales meeting if it's warm or if they've heard of you before. I mean, if you were going to meet somebody in person that you had heard good things about, you'd be a lot less nervous and weird about it versus if you had heard nothing about them. So reading a blind date or blind.
Oh, yeah. Oh God, you started on dating. Thank God I don't have to do that anymore. All right. Well,
Yeah.
Moving on. I could talk to you all day, Alex, and you got to come back on the show, but thanks for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join me. And I appreciate it. If I want to get in touch with you, if I want to learn more about the tool, all those things, where do I go? Where do I find out the more information that I desperately need to know?
Of course. LinkedIn's a great place to connect with me if you haven't guessed that already. And then the website for the tool is useaware.co. You can find that on my LinkedIn as well. And that's the webpage for everything the tool does. But I encourage you to send me a connection request on LinkedIn. Let me know that you heard this podcast show and we'll go from there.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much again. I really appreciate it. I learned a lot. So we'll hopefully get you back on again sometime soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kurt.
All right. Thank you. All right, everyone. Thanks for taking the time out of your busy weeks to join me. I appreciate you. Go and check out that tool. There's a trial. You can use it. And also, Alex is very, very communicative. So if you have questions on how to use the tool, if you get stuck or something, you can message him. He helped me a lot right in the beginning. So make sure you go check it out. I'll have all the links that he described in the show description below. All right. And we will see you next time.